With all of the talk of the new God of War, Marvel's Spider-Man, Days Gone, Detroit Become Human, The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and a handful of other outstanding first-party exclusives that Sony is aiming to deliver to gamers in the twilight years of the PS4, it might be easy to momentarily overlook what is shaping up to be perhaps the weirdest, darkest, and most mysterious PlayStation exclusive of them all, Death Stranding. Even though we've gotten several somewhat lengthy trailers for Death Stranding, many aspects of the game are still cryptically shrouded in mystery, a marketing strategy that Kojima is no stranger to, and most gamers are just as perplexed as they are excited for the upcoming sci-fi experience. Despite the vague nature of the clues that the trailers have given us, we do know a few things about what to expect in Death Stranding. From what we've seen so far, provided no new information completely contradicts it, we can logically deduce that the game will have a very disturbing mix of horror and sci-fi, and we know that it will feature a very intriguing and eclectic cast of skilled talents. And, maybe most provocatively of all, Death Stranding will revolve around some of the most enigmatic areas of science and physics. Another important element to Death Stranding to remember is that this is very likely to be a sort of a swan song for Kojima. Surely not in the sense that it will be his last game. I'm sure Kojima still has plenty of great games to come long after Death Stranding is out, but at the same time, this is surely a major passion project for him. After being forced to make basically nothing but Metal Gear Solid and Zone of the Enders games for over 20 years, it's probably not much of a logical leap to assume that now that he's free from that lengthy confinement of his creativity and finds himself now at the top of the power structure, largely calling the shots on his own with what I'm sure is a generous budget and deadline from Sony to facilitate his freedom, and millions of fans who will literally buy anything with his name on it at this point, myself included, Kojima is perfectly poised to deliver the most imaginative, risk-taking project he's ever done, if he chooses to do so. And judging by the trailers, it does appear that that's exactly what he's doing. With that in mind, I think it's fair to theorize that Kojima will be reaching to the far ends of what the world of conventional theoretical physics has already established, and filling in the blanks with his own imagination, much like the way the Metal Gear Solid games use real-world events from history like the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan and elements of the Cold War as backdrops, and fills in the finer details with his own characters and storylines. In the most recent trailer, we see what is easily interpreted as a blending of worlds. The main character, who appears to be played by Norman Reedus, and his companion seem to be trying to avoid detection from some sort of being that cannot be seen but is still somehow present. And it appears the being cannot see them, although it can interact with them, as we see in a rather upsetting scene that plays out with one of the characters getting absorbed by the ground, which only appears to be liquid around him, a fate apparently worse than death, as his partner decides to spare him of this by executing him, before he himself gets sucked up into the air by perhaps the same force. In other areas of the trailer, we see air become water, land become oil, and we even see bugs crawl up surfaces that do not appear to be there. Obviously, we're not meant to fully understand this yet, but it appears that the physical world that we know and understand and some other realm or parallel universe are opening up to each other in some ways while not in other ways. Water and air, high and low, inside and outside, are all concepts that seem to shatter to the ground at the whim of a force or forces that are beyond the control of the characters that we see. These elements are not too far from many theories espoused by theoretical physicists who encapsulate these very concepts with which Death Stranding seems to be dealing under the name of brain worlds, which are essentially parallel universes that hover just out of reach of each other and exist in an infinite amount alongside each other, yet sovereign, as we're all separated not by space as we know it, but by the membrane of the universes contained in a larger multiverse. Most serious theorists who delve into these topics admit that travel between these parallel realities could be entirely possible, if not incredibly easy with the correct technology. Judging by how the rules of reality seem to melt away so often in the footage that we've seen of Death Stranding so far, if what we're seeing on screen is to be taken all literally, we are very likely looking at a game that will explore these concepts head on. And it would make sense that Kojima would go in this direction, as he is a self-described fan of science fiction classics like Blade Runner and Terminator, which directly deals with time travel and alternate realities. In an interview last year, Kojima did mention something called timefall, which is an otherworldly type of rain that manipulates time, growing plants and in aging humans. He stopped short of explaining it further, but this could very well be a sign that Kojima is in fact taking concepts from modern theoretical sciences and twisting them to suit his vision for the game. Kojima could be taking more of these concepts and pushing them further, while also mixing in his own fictitious concepts and characters. If I were a betting man, I'd say we're in store for one hell of a science fiction story here. Other interpretations of what we've seen in the trailers have been less literal and translate a lot of what we've seen so far into metaphors about being lost, being alone, even some not so subtle messages about pollution. The first trailer in particular does seem to support these ideas, as all of the dead fish and crustaceans on the beach combined with the baby turning into oil do seem to warn us not so subtly about killing our future with our misuse of the planet's resources. This less literal interpretation of the physics in the trailer is also interesting, and I don't really think it negates the parallel universe idea necessarily either. Kojima has admitted that the baby is in fact literal and is a real part of the game as a plot device and also a factor in gameplay, so we probably shouldn't get too carried away with assigning metaphors to everything. As best as I can tell, all of these things are literal and do involve some sort of literal explanation, which points us back into the direction of theoretical physics. But all of these concepts, and even more of them, could all theoretically exist at the same time and work in tandem to deliver the story of Death Stranding. If there's anything we know about Kojima, it's that he knows how to weave multiple storylines and multiple concepts together, not in a messy way, but in a way that forms a complex tapestry that ultimately becomes one massive experience when it's all said and done. With the massive allowance of time and resources Kojima most likely has available to him now, combined with what must be an exhilarating amount of creative freedom that he probably hasn't experienced since before most of his hardcore fans were even born, I'd be shocked if some utterly mind-blowing science fiction wasn't in the works with Death Stranding.
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.